Welcome to the Training and Doctrine Command Virtual OPFOR Academy. This visualization depicts an OPFOR Mechanized Infantry Company detachment executing the OPFOR Tactical Drill Situational Breach against BLUFOR Mechanized Infantry. This module is designed for company-level units assigned an OPFOR mission during home station training. By the end of this module, you should have an appreciation for the subtask synchronization when executing a situational breach. For the purpose of clarity, this visualization conducts the situational breach in the daylight.
Our detachment's mission is to destroy a BLUFOR Mech Infantry platoon to support the battalion detachment's integrated attack. Battalion is depending on us to rapidly bypass other BLUFOR positions and get to our objective. We will attack on this axis of advance, establish a support by fire position in front of the BLUFOR, and assault from the flank. To disrupt our attack, the BLUFOR could place an obstacle covered by up to 2 squads, indirect fires, and QRF support from the northeast. If we cannot find a bypass, we will conduct a situational breach. Let's review our functional organization for that drill. If we encounter an obstacle, breach platoon, our lead element, becomes the breach element. 1 mech squad and the dedicated engineer squad execute the breach, while the other 2 squads support by fire at the breach point. The dedicated mortar battery provides suppression and obscuration fires to support the breach. Priority of fires is to the breach element and then the security element. The affiliated guerrilla squad, operating in 2 teams, recon the area, locate the obstacle, and provide security to prevent BLUFOR reinforcement or support. I will hold the 1st and 2nd platoons out of contact. They form the assault element for our main objective, attack. If there are no further questions, move out.
As the guerrilla element conducts reconnaissance ahead, the OPFOR CDET moves toward their planned attack axis.
Commander, this is Guerrilla Leader. We see an obstacle with 3 rows, and there are no bypasses. First, there is single-strand wire, then a log abattis, then single-strand wire with visible mines. 2 infantry fighting vehicles are in overwatch positions.
Roger. Send coordinates of BLUFOR overwatch to the mortars and establish isolation positions. Break. Lead platoon. Prepare to breach the obstacle.
Commander, Wilco.
Mortar battery. Establish firing positions to suppress BLUFOR overwatch and obscure the breach point. Over.
Moving now. We'll load HE smoke mix. Commander, mortars are in position.
Roger. Begin suppression fires. Breach element. Ensure BLUFOR positions are obscured before exposing your platoon.
Commander, Wilco, we are ready to execute. Mortars, shift smoke to the obstacle. Keep the HE on the BLUFOR positions. Commander, both BLUFOR positions are suppressed, moving to breach the obstacle now. Mortars, adjust fire on the obstacle. Up 100, left 50. 2 volleys of smoke, then shift all fires back to BLUFOR positions.
Roger. Keep up the volume of fire.
Commander, sporadic enemy indirect fires at the breach site. No casualties to report, continuing mission.
Once fire superiority is established, the CDET commander repositions the assault element in order to either support the breach or penetrate the obstacle as quickly as possible.
Assault element, move up. Stay out of contact.
contact.
Roger. Roger.
The engineers breached the first obstacle row with Bangalore torpedoes, then used grappling hooks to pull the wire back. They use additional explosives and Bangalores to breach each subsequent row.
Commander, first obstacle is breached. Shift fires north.
Roger. Mortars, shift fire to the north side of the obstacles.
Commander, Wilco. Commander, the east support by fire position is receiving indirect fire. Repositioning, time now.
Roger.
Commander, the east support by fire position is reestablished. Commander, repositioning. Receiving Blue 4 counterfire.
Roger. Keep fires on the Blue 4 positions. The battalion detachment should start their attack any minute now, and that should shift Blue 4 counterfire off us.
Commander, 4 IFVs moving from north to south. 2 are entering my kill zone. Request mortar fires.
Roger. Shifting mortar fire to support.
All 3 obstacles are breached. Lift fires vicinity of the obstacle. Marking lane now.
Roger. Mortars. Shift fire north to the main objective. Keep 2 guns firing on the Blue 4 QRF.
Commander, Wilco. Commander, lane is marked. Breach is secure.
Roger. Assault element. Let's move through the breach. Mortars bound by platoon.
Acknowledged. Commander, moving through the breach now.
Roger.
Second platoon is north of the breach.
Roger. Moving now. Mortars, follow me.
Commander, first platoon has cleared the obstacle.
Roger. Breach platoon. Remount and pick up trail. Leave 1 squad to secure the north side of the breach. Guerrilla leader. Report if the IFVs displace.
We have flanked the QRF and destroyed another IFV. I only have 6 guerrillas left.
All units, continue the mission to attack the Blue 4 platoon. Battalion, this is CDET West. We are continuing the mission north of the obstacles. We've lost 1 BMP and 2 gun mortars. The obstacle is breached with 1 lane and secured by 1 squad. There are at least 2 Bradley fighting vehicles and approximately 1 Blue 4 squad in the vicinity of the obstacle site.
Roger.
This concludes the situational breach. The key to this drill is rapid execution, isolating, securing, and penetrating the obstacle before the Blue 4 can react. You are now familiar with the subtask execution for the drill situational breach. These actions apply to both the regular and irregular elements of the hybrid threat. The OPFOR drill situational breach and TC7100 series references are available on the Army Training Network web portal. Questions may be Welcome to the Training and Doctrine Command Virtual OPFOR Academy. This visualization depicts an OPFOR insurgent element executing the OPFOR drill break contact. This visualization complements the TRADOC G2's instructional video for the break contact drill and is designed for company-level units assigned an OPFOR mission during home station training. By the end of this module, you should have an appreciation for the subtask synchronization of the break contact drill. The OPFOR conducts this drill to remove the BLUFOR's ability to maintain contact with and decisively engage the OPFOR. OPFOR drills are tactical tasks executed without hesitation or need for further coordination. The OPFOR here are insurgents conducting a food distribution mission in an isolated village to gain public support. The group consists of 20 personnel, 2 groups of multifunctional cells organized to influence the local population and provide security. They are enabled by local civilians, both coerced and willing recruits. The element is equipped with small arms, RPGs, grenade launchers, and IEDs.
BLUFOR have deployed to support host nation security operations. In our district, a BLUFOR brigade is conducting stability ops. We are undermining BLUFOR humanitarian aid and building popular support for an upcoming offensive in the region. The BLUFOR in our sector are usually aggressive, but are restricted by their rules of engagement and the need to avoid collateral casualties to civilians. Our plan is to establish a food distribution site in the center of the village. You'll have 4 security elements. Position them to observe the primary avenues of approach with small arms, RPGs, and protective IEDs and obstacles to help isolate the food distribution operation. The influence teams at the site, supported by our recruits, will conduct local security and distribute food to the villagers. The InfoWar cell will film the event for social media release in order to promote insurgent support or sow seeds of dissatisfaction if BLUFOR disrupt the operation. We may encounter mounted BLUFOR conducting security patrols during our operation. They may have a tactical UAS as well. Their most likely direction of approach is along the main road from the southeast. If we have to break contact, the nearest security team will fix the approaching BLUFOR with an IED and direct fire. This permits our food distribution elements to cache their equipment and move to local safe houses. If the BLUFOR get past the fixing teams, the obstacles may permit us to isolate a portion of their force. We'll use the civilian crowd to shield our withdrawal. If there are no questions, report when you're ready to move out.
The OPFOR emplaces security, IEDs, and obstacles and begins food distribution as planned, drawing a large crowd.
Commander, this is Security Northeast observing BLUFOR patrol approaching from the northeast. 6 vehicles moving slowly but steadily. They will reach my position in 4 to 6 minutes. Over. Commander, there's a BLUFOR drone above the convoy, about 1,000 meters ahead of the lead vehicle. I think it spotted us.
Roger. A BLUFOR platoon is too large for us to handle. We'll break contact. Security Southeast, move north and assume control of Security Northeast's IED so that they can break contact and reposition. Then both teams fix the BLUFOR patrol to allow our main body to exfiltrate. Over.
Spotting the Security Northeast's weapons with the Raven, the lead BLUFOR vehicle engages.
We are popping smoke and displacing. Security Southeast, take control of our IED.
A useful tactical technique to enhance OPFOR freedom of maneuver is to brief all team members on the location, trigger reference point, and remote control method for all IEDs. This permits the commander to adjust team locations as the situation develops.
Here, I will show you how to protect our comrades. Father, I am sorry you have not received your share yet. Because of the Blue Four who are attacking us here, we must leave before everyone can be fed. They are to blame, and we hope that you'll make sure they know it. You see? Our influence makes people work for us. Now get that truck back to the safe house. We need to deceive that UAS. Security southeast.
Engage the UAS and see if you can draw it away.
Commander, the UAS is now flying southeast. We can double back now and establish our fixing position. Over.
Roger. Fix the Blue 4 with the IED and direct fires. We'll rally the civilian crowd to shield your withdrawal.
Roger. They're in position. Hit them now.
Hold them while our main body continues to exfil and keep me informed. Break. All elements, ensure you drop your security OPs to observe the Blue 4 and guard your safe houses as you withdraw.
Commander, we are taking casualties. We cannot hold them here for long.
Roger. Bound back by teams and see if you can draw the vehicles forward onto the obstacles. Break. Recruits, work with our civilian friends to congregate at the northeast obstacle. Encourage them to crowd around the blue vehicles and slow their progress.
Commander, food site is broken down, and all but one team have cached their gear and established their OPs. We'll report when all are secure in safe houses.
Roger, looks like we're doing well. Perhaps we can isolate a Blue 4 vehicle or gain some good video. InfoWar team, move to observe and film our civilian friends at the obstacle.
We're getting good footage, but the Blue 4 are not moving into the crowd. Their vehicles are staying at a distance.
Roger, we're just about complete. They'll probably back off to assess and perhaps cordon the area.
Hide your camera and make your way back. Break. All elements, I'm going off the net. Complete caches, avoid further contact, and report by landline once you reach your safe houses. Then I will put out instructions for us to continue our mission.
You are now familiar with the subtask execution for the OPFOR drill break contact. These subtask actions apply to both the regular and irregular elements of the hybrid threat. The OPFOR task outline and TC7100 series references are available on the Army Training Network web portal. Questions may be directed to the TRADOC G2 ACE Threats Integration Directorate at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, the Army's responsible official for hybrid threat tactical doctrine. Good luck in your training. Be aggressive and adapt quickly. Welcome to the Training and Doctrine Command Virtual OPFOR Academy. This visualization depicts an OPFOR insurgent element executing the OPFOR tactical task, Fix Drill. This visualization complements the TRADOC G2's instructional video for the Fix Drill and is designed for company-level units assigned an OPFOR mission during home station training. By the end of this module, you should have an appreciation for the subtask synchronization of the Fix Drill. The OPFOR conducts this drill to maintain freedom of maneuver, retain tactical initiative, and/or prevent Blue 4 movement. OPFOR drills are tactical tasks executed without hesitation or need for further coordination. The OPFOR is an insurgent element conducting movement to a complex battle position to the northwest. In the course of this movement, the insurgents will execute the Fix Drill in order to enable the main body to continue movement. For the purpose of clarity, this visualization shows the Fix Drill being conducted in daylight.
Blue 4 have deployed to support host nation security operations. In our district, a Blue 4 Brigade is conducting stability ops. We are transitioning to the offense to counter Blue 4's success, cause casualties, and erode popular support. Therefore, we are moving to consolidate the district's cells in a complex battle position to the northwest. Let's review the situation and movement. We may encounter Blue 4 security patrols of 14 to 20 soldiers mounted on MAT-Vs. 1 or 2 may have remote weapon stations. We can also expect Blue 4 UAS and/or helicopters in support. Over the past month, Blue 4 mounted patrols have moved on roads with little dismounted patrolling away from their vehicles. To avoid Blue, we will move cross-country as much as possible. When we cannot avoid passing close to major roads, we'll deploy security teams to provide early warning. If contact is made, the nearest cell will fix the Blue 4 for at least 30 minutes to allow the main body to avoid contact. Normally, I prefer to fix a Blue 4 element with less risky actions, such as deception or interdiction. However, with limited time and resources and based upon Blue 4 behavior patterns, we'll fix Blue with fires and a situational obstacle. A couple of surface-laid mines may fix them for a short time. If they seek a bypass, we'll escalate to fires. If we disable a vehicle or cause enough casualties, I expect them to stop maneuvering aggressively. While any of these actions may fix them, we must ensure it is long enough for our main body to successfully egress. The fixing element will be supported with security teams already deployed, as well as indirect fire, air defense, and InfoWar cells. Ensure your teams carry a pair of anti-tank mines. Carefully rehearse rapid mine emplacement while covering with RPG-7 and machine gun fires and sending the coordinates to the indirect fire cells. Finally, the fixing cell should break contact and exfiltrate in a different direction than the main body in order to mislead Blue 4 surveillance. I'll move with the main body. If there are no questions, report when you're complete with your rehearsals and are ready to move out.
With security OPs established, the insurgents move to a planned link-up point where another cell will join the main body. While waiting, the lead cell conducts a security sweep of an abandoned village to the north of the primary route.
This is OP1, observing Blue 4 patrol approaching from the northeast. 4 vehicles, moving slowly but steadily. They will reach my position in 4 to 6 minutes. Over.
Roger. Security cell. Fix the Blue 4 element on the road. Ensure they do not pass the intersection for at least 30 minutes. You are now our fix element.
Roger. Deploying now.
Fix leader. I am shifting the SA-16 to the north to provide air defense overwatch and prevent Blue 4 air support from interfering. The rocket team and the mortar are establishing positions to provide support. Our InfoWar team is moving into the small village at the route intersection to film the action.
Roger. Teams are establishing firing positions. I am positioning an additional security team on the high ground to our right flank for protection. We have time to place only 2 mines on the road. I will send coordinates to the mortar and rocket teams. We will see how long they take looking for more mines and seeking a bypass. If necessary, I will engage with fire to prevent their maneuver.
The fixed cell has quickly established a point obstacle to halt the Blue 4 before they pass the abandoned village. RPG-7s and RPK machine guns cover the obstacle, and an additional flank security position is established. The SA-16 and InfoWar teams act as additional security for the fixing element and main body.
Stand by. They are approaching the mines.
Acknowledge. Nobody move. Observe and see what they do. It looks like they will not try to clear them. They are trying to bypass. All elements, stand by for fires. Rocket team, fire rocket.
Roger. Shot over.
You're on target, but we need more. They've spotted some of us and have begun the maneuver. Fire the mortar with smoke. HE mix. We'll see how much they move around those mines when they cannot see. Open fire! Commander, this is Fix Leader. We are working around the obstacle, and we are engaging now. We will do what it takes to fix them here. Over.
Roger. We are changing the route and staying on the south side of the valley to avoid Blue 4 observation. We will need all of the 30 minutes.
That vehicle's remote machine gun is killing us. We need to hit it and get them away from our wounded. element to the right and take them from the flank. Well done with the RPG. Now focus fires on the Blue 4 vehicle. Order, adjust fire. Direction 1200, drop 100. Vehicle and soldiers. Over.
Fix leader, we are low on ammunition. We can only fire 3 more rounds.
Roger, check fire. Conserve your ammo, but save that target. You hit some of them, and we may have achieved our purpose. Commander, this is Fix Leader. We have disabled 1 vehicle and caused a number of casualties. I have 2 dead. Blue will soon figure out that there are no civilians in these shacks and shoot their artillery. They should take an hour to search this location and recover their vehicle. Recommend we break contact immediately to avoid Blue Air or UAS.
Good job. We're clear of your area. Withdraw southeast. Leave a security element to observe. If they do not recover their vehicle by nightfall, we'll hit them again. Ensure the SA-16 team watches for a medevac helicopter.
Blue 4, UAS in northeast, one of the small ones.
Security. We cannot use missiles on the little ones. If it sees you, lead it north. Be ready to decoy it with smoke and buy us some time. Then begin your withdrawal.
Their artillery is always late. Now they'll have to wait even longer for it to finish.
Commander, it looks like the Blue 4 will take several hours to recover their vehicle. No medevac helicopter has shown up. Our SA-16 team is now continuing movement. The InfoWar team will stay in the village until nightfall.
Excellent. Join us as quickly as possible, but be careful of additional Blue 4.
You are now familiar with the functional organization and subtask execution for the OPFOR task Fix Drill. The subtask actions apply to both the regular and irregular elements of the hybrid threat. Welcome to the Training and Doctrine Command, Virtual OPFOR Academy. Welcome to the Training and Doctrine Command, Virtual OPFOR Academy. You are about to watch a hybrid OPFOR company detachment execute the OPFOR drill, Fire and Maneuver, against a Blue 4 company. This visualization complements the TRADOC G2's instructional video for the OPFOR drill, Fire and Maneuver, and is designed for company-level units assigned an OPFOR mission during home station training. By the end of this module, you should have an appreciation of the subtask synchronization for the Fire and Maneuver drill. For the OPFOR, drills are detachment-level tactical tasks executed without hesitation or need for further coordination. The OPFOR Company Detachment, or CDET, is a mechanized infantry company with dedicated enabling elements from brigade and affiliated guerrilla elements. The CDET is functionally organized to conduct an attack to seize the northern bridge. The CDET has 9 squads and 10 BMPs. Brigade has dedicated the following enabling elements: 1 SUAV and 3 2S91 120mm self-propelled gun mortars. Additionally, 3 affiliated guerrilla elements have agreed to act as security. The CDET is functionally organized into security elements, a fixing element, a firing element, a maneuver element, and a support element under CDET commander's control. The CDET is tasked to seize the Northern Bridge crossing site in order to ensure freedom of maneuver for follow-on forces. On the Blue 4 side, intelligence reports indicate a possible OPFOR operating in zone. The Blue 4 battalion commander has ordered a mechanized infantry company to conduct an attack to seize key terrain to southwest of the Northern Bridge crossing site in order to force the withdrawal of OPFOR west of the river. The company commander is moving in the center of the formation as they conduct tactical movement to the west. OPFOR intelligence indicate Blue 4 contact is likely in the vicinity of the northern bridge at predicted enemy location 1. The commander chooses an axis of attack, providing the freedom of maneuver to avoid the majority of expected Blue 4. He plans to make contact with Blue 4 units crossing bridge sites and expects to direct the fire and maneuver drill with the intent to fix, bypass, and continue movement to seize the OPFOR objective. The CDET commander designates the element to fix the lead Blue 4 platoon and suppresses the main body to enable freedom of maneuver. The commander now isolates the Blue 4 in order to prevent follow-on forces from joining the engagement. With the tactical advantage, the CDET commander orders the maneuver element to close with and engage Blue 4 in order to continue movement to seize the objective.
Security sections in position at each bridge, covering each of the PELs in order to identify the Blue 4 direction of travel and disposition.
Roger. What is status of SUAV?
SUAV is on station and orbiting northern bridge site. Coverage extends 4 kilometers to the east.
Roger. All elements. Expect Blue 4 contact. Recon is set at the 3 bridge sites.
Continue movement north to seize the objective.
OP-1 and SUAV confirm Blue 4 Mechanized Infantry Company traveling west towards PEL 1 at approximately 20 kilometers per hour. Security Element 1 reports Blue 4 will cross Northern Bridge in 5 to 10 minutes. Request SUAV maintain contact with Blue 4.
Roger. Mortars. Establish firing position to suppress Blue 4 once they cross the bridge.
Wilco, orders set.
First platoon. Establish hasty fighting positions to fix Blue 4 to stop Blue 4 movement south.
Wilco. Engaging Blue 4 lead now.
Second platoon. Establish a support by fire position to the west. Suppress Blue 4 main body.
Wilco, moving BMPs to the west. We'll establish support by fire position in 3 minutes.
Roger. Third platoon. On order, maneuver to Blue 4's eastern flank and attack to defeat remaining Blue 4.
The OPFOR commander commences the isolation actions by directing the guerrilla security elements to emplace IEDs at each bridge site and maneuvers the SUAV to provide early warning of possible Blue 4.
Security leader. In place IEDs at each bridge to prevent Blue 4 reinforcements crossing.
Already executing.
Roger. Move SUAV to screen the objective to provide early warning of Blue 4 reinforcements. Mortars. Execute survivability move to alternate firing position to avoid counterfire. Priority of fires to second platoon.
Wilco, moving now.
Commander, IEDs are in place and armed.
Acknowledge all.
The Blue 4 are now isolated and fixed with direct and indirect fires. The CDET commander senses that he has the initiative.
Continuing to engage Blue 4. 3 BFBs destroyed. Trail Blue 4 platoon flanking east.
Acknowledged. Break. Third platoon. Move to attack by fire position east of Blue 4 to defeat the remaining Blue 4 units.
Wilco, moving now. Set. Engaging 4 M2s attempting to move east. The platoon is seeking cover. Infantry dismounting.
Roger. Continue to engage. Security leader. Reposition your North Bridge element east to provide early warning of Blue 4 units.
Commander, Blue 4 infantry are remounting their vehicles. Looks like they're breaking contact.
SUAV leader. Confirm Blue 4 crossing Northern Bridge heading east. First platoon. Maneuver to support by fire position to cover the objective. Second platoon. Attack to seize objective.
Wilco, moving now to seize the objective.
Third platoon. Maneuver 2 and occupy support by fire position east of objective.
Confirm. Blue 4 crossing bridge, heading east. IED at North Bridge detonated. It was ineffective. Bradleys have fled the area. Request mortar fire.
Roger. Mortars. Shift fires to Northern Bridge.
Objective secure.
Set in support by fire position west of objective.
Set in support by fire position east of objective.
Blue 4 is defeated and we own the bridge. Improve your positions and prepare for a counterattack.
You are now familiar with the functional organization and subtask execution for the OPFOR drill, Fire and Maneuver. These actions apply to both the regular and irregular elements of the hybrid threat. The OPFOR task outline and TC7100 series references are available on the Army Training Network web portal. Questions may be directed to the TRADOC G2 ACE Threats.
I'm Major General Bob Brown, Commanding General of the Maneuver Center of Excellence, Fort Benning, Georgia, home of infantry and armor. The Battle of Ganjgal provides all soldiers and leaders a venue to learn and develop. We'll take a look at the heroic acts that occurred at Ganjgal that day, not to critique, but to learn from those so we can set ourselves up for victory in the future. During the video, if you could take a look at the intelligence aspects that occur, what intel was of value, what could they have used, what didn't they use, and what systems were out there that might have helped a lot during this battle. Additionally, look at the contingency operations. Those forces that are in your area you don't necessarily own. How could you protect those? How could you incorporate those in the fight better? We'll take a look at non-organic units, transition teams, and some of the aspects of synchronizing and supporting those elements that are in the area. And finally, we'll look at command post operations, a critical area, as we all know. How do you operate that command post? How do you get people qualified? What training could have occurred, and what things did occur in that command post that helped the fight, or maybe didn't help the fight as much as they could have. So take a look at this video to learn from the past. Those brave heroes that day have our utmost respect, and we really need to use these lessons from the past to prepare ourselves to win in the future.
This video is a recreation of the attack by anti-Afghanistan forces on U.S. and Afghan national security forces. The multinational force was conducting a key leader engagement in Konar Province, Afghanistan, near Ganjgal village on September 8, 2009. All times during this video recreation are in Afghan local. The driving force behind the September 8th mission was a September 3rd key leader engagement and cordon and search in the village of Damdara, 2 kilometers from Ganjgal. During this mission, the Afghan National Army also made contact with Ganjgal villagers who extended a cordial reception. However, the patrol was engaged with harassing fire from 3 to 5 insurgents in the vicinity of Ganjgal village as they departed. After the September 3rd contact, Ganjgal tribal elders held a meeting with Afghan National Army and Border Police. As a result, village elders renounced the Taliban and allowed the support to be rebroadcast on local radio stations as a show of good faith. The second key leader engagement was originally planned for September 7th, but was delayed until the 8th due to conflicting operations by the Afghan Border Police. The plan was for the Afghan National Army to move up to the eastern edge of the village and clear downhill to the west while their operations officer conducted the key leader engagement. Observation posts were planned for both sides of the valley by the Afghan National Army and Border Police. Several other observation posts and blocking positions were also planned for the high ground to the east. Although dedicated aviation support was not available on the 8th, the Afghani mission planner decided to proceed with the mission because available indirect fire support would mitigate any lack of aviation support. The battalion assistant intelligence officer also believed that aviation support dedicated to a nearby operation could be diverted if necessary. Neither the fire support officer or fire support NCO were consulted regarding the proposed fire support plan. Pre-planned fire support missions were based on historical insurgent support by fire positions located around Ganjgal. There were no reports from the previous day that would indicate a large prepared ambush in Ganjgal village. The battalion assistant intelligence officer assessed the enemy's most likely course of action would be harassment from 3 to 5 insurgents as the patrol left the village. No field-grade officers from the Army battalion were present during any of these planning sessions. The supporting Army battalion's key leadership positions were undermanned. The battalion commander was on leave, and the operations officer was temporarily assigned to another ongoing mission. The operations sergeant major had been reassigned before his replacement was in place. The fire support officer had been tasked with an additional duty preventing him from fully performing his primary duties. Recognizing the lack of field-grade officers, the brigade commander sent his fire support officer to fill in as battalion operations officer. Both the night and day battle captain had previously been relieved of their leadership positions within the battalion. On the morning of September 8th, a multinational element began the mission to search and clear Ganjgal village while the Afghani operations officer conducted a key leader engagement. The force consists of approximately 60 Afghan National Army, 30 Afghan Border Police, 14 U.S. Marine Corps embedded training team personnel, and a U.S. Army infantry platoon with a scout element. At 02:30, the Army Battalion Scouts established their observation posts overwatching the village of Ganjgal. They saw nothing out of the ordinary for the village at that hour. At around 0300, the Afghan National Army Mounted Patrol departed Fob Joyce along with their Marine embedded training team. Shortly thereafter, the Afghan National Army element linked up with the Afghan Border Police and moved towards Ganjgal village. At 0330, a platoon from the Army Battalion set up their blocking position at the mouth of the valley. Prior to reaching the village, the rocky and narrow terrain leading into Ganjgal caused the patrol to dismount their vehicles at the objective rally point and move towards the village on foot. Proceeding on foot prevented the use of the vehicle's crew-served weapons from supporting the patrol in an engagement. The ABP were able to move 3 small pickup trucks forward with the patrol in order to establish a support by fire position closer to the village. At 0430, the scouts saw the lights in Ganjgal village simultaneously turn off. Prior to this, it appeared to the scouts that the village was conducting their normal morning routine. A blocking obstacle of fertilizer bags was also encountered on the road to Ganjgal village. Just prior to first light at 0530, a small element made up of 8 Afghan National Army, 1 Marine with an M240, and an Army officer set up an observation post south of the village of Ganjgal. At approximately 0530, the patrol reached the southwestern portion of Ganjgal village and were engaged by small arms, medium machine guns, and rocket-propelled grenades from 3 to 5 AAF on the ridge north of the village. This was quickly followed by accurate fire from inside the village and other positions on the hills around the village. Coalition forces returned fire and took cover behind buildings or behind the dirt and rock terraces. The lead 4 Marines took cover initially in a courtyard. The terrain limited the Marines from talking directly to the Army Battalion Tactical Operations Center, or TOC, so the scouts acted as a relay. The Marines requested immediate suppression missions on the pre-planned targets in the area. 4 fire missions were completed with little effect on the dispersed and dug-in insurgents. At 0550, the scouts relayed a request from the Marines for aviation support. Contrary to relayed reports, the battle captain believed that the enemy was still a small force of 3 to 5 insurgents and did not warrant aviation support. The Marines pinned down in the courtyard were taking fire from the adjacent houses and requested artillery smoke to cover their withdrawal. The request was denied because only white phosphorus smoke was available, which can cause serious civilian casualties if fired into an urban area. Multiple calls for indirect fire support were passed from the Marines through the scouts to the battalion TOC, but the battalion leadership did not authorize any fire mission that could cause damage near the village. An hour into the ambush, the armored platoon manning the blocking position was ordered by the battalion TOC to move into the valley to establish a new blocking position near the rally point. As the battle continued, well-coordinated small arms and RPG fire from the north, south, and east of Ganjgal pinned down the patrol and prevented their withdrawal. At 0630, after receiving another report of 30 to 60 insurgents, and several of them wearing military-style body armor and Kevlar helmets, the battalion TOC requested aviation support from the supporting aviation brigade. At that time, there were only 2 OH-58 Delta Scout Weapons teams available to the brigade. Scout Weapons Team 1 was pre-assigned to another battalion mission and was actively supporting a troops in contact. Scout Weapons Team 2 was on standby to support the remaining brigade area of operations. Believing the request would be approved, a soldier in the battalion TOC directly contacted SWT-1 to inform them of a change of mission. After the unauthorized retasking was discovered, SWT-1 returned to their original mission. The request was denied because the battalion TOC was required to submit an aviation support request through the brigade TOC. At 0635, another immediate smoke fire mission was requested to help the patrol break contact. The battalion TOC agreed to fire at a pre-planned target outside of the village. 120mm mortars were fired from Fob Joyce, but the white phosphorus smoke was ineffective at concealing any withdrawal. Responding to the lack of aviation support and ineffective indirect fire, the insurgents began to maneuver west along the high ground to improve their fields of fire and bring more effective fire on the patrol. At around 0700, the battle captain asked the Air Force Joint Tactical Air Controller to find out what air assets were available. The JTAC recommended opening an air troops in contact to bring in aviation support within 15 minutes. The battle captain decided not to request any support. At 0710, the request for CCA was submitted to the brigade TOC and approved. The battalion TOC informed the patrol that a scout weapons team would be on station within 15 minutes, and SWT-2 took off from Fob Finney en route to Ganjgal. The patrol began to withdraw from terrace to terrace under heavy fire. 2 hours into the fight, the patrol radioed the battalion TOC with their first 9-line medevac request. The 4 Marines at the lead of the patrol had managed to move further west of the village into a trench. One of the Marines was wounded in the move, greatly restricting their ability to maneuver any further west. At 0745, SWT-2 arrived on station. Though they had not received the updated threat report of 30 to 60 AAF, their attacks greatly decreased the amount of fire being directed on the patrol. At 0750, the Army platoon moving to the rally point rolled their ASV. They reported no injuries, but the vehicle's weapons were destroyed in the rollover. At 0800, the patrol established a landing zone so the medevac helicopter could land. At this time, repeated attempts were made to establish contact with the 4 Marines in the trench. As wounded made it back to the rally point, they used their own vehicles to evacuate less critically wounded back to Fob Joyce. SWT-2 escorted the medevac to Asadabad. As the first medevac landed at Asadabad, the medevac pilot requested additional air support from the Air Mission Commander in SWT-2. The request was denied because he did not believe additional support was necessary in the limited confines of Ganjgal Valley. 3 hours after the start of the ambush, the 4 Marines were declared to be missing in action, along with 10 Afghan National Army and an interpreter. The Joint Tactical Air Controller immediately opened an air troops in contact to request aviation support. 2 Marines jumped in a pickup truck to move towards the village to find the missing Marines. "18 minutes after the air tick was declared, fixed-wing jets arrived on station as a show of force. No ordnance was dropped. The Marines made several trips to move the wounded back to the rally point. Receiving heavy fire as they moved close to the village, the Marines had to abandon their truck before they could make it to the last reported position of the missing Marines. Getting back to the rally point, the Marine officer in charge requested the armored platoon be released from their blocking position to move further into the valley. The request was denied, and the Marines took an Afghan National Army Humvee back into the valley. They were able to convince a few Afghan National Army and Border Police to move with them. At 10:48, UAV assets arrived in the area to identify possible movement of missing servicemen towards the Pakistani border. At 10:50, an official duty status whereabouts unknown, or DUS-1, was declared. Shortly thereafter, Scout Weapons Team 2 located the 4 Marines and 1 interpreter in a trench, 20 meters from the current location of the Marine officer in charge. All were KIA. An MH-60 with Air Force pararescue on board twice attempted to land and recover the deceased Marines, but the enemy fire was still too heavy. The Marine officer in charge managed to move to the trench and begin the recovery. From 1200 to 1420, the remainder of the patrol gradually left or were evacuated from Ganjgal Valley. Later that day, another Afghan National Army element and their Special Operations Force mentors air assaulted into the village and cleared it of any remaining enemy. Intelligence reports are based on a multitude of factors. One factor that may need to be considered for a planned mission would be what would happen if the plan had been leaked. One way to minimize this would be through the use of ISR assets prior to the mission. Any number of ISR assets may have been able to give early detection that the military trainers were walking into an ambush. Planning staffs must review all concepts of operation for units within their battle space to ensure proper planning and risk are mitigated. Non-organic units should expect and seek out such review of their CONOPS. Non-standard units such as ETTs and MITTs need to be supported for missions that they perform. Commanders need to ensure they are supported and that they conduct joint planning prior to the mission to synchronize support and effects. Key personnel must present or closely monitor TOC and CP operations to aid in decision-making and grant permission for requested assets. Leaders must select appropriate personnel based upon clearly demonstrated leadership and qualifications. Personnel in the Tactical Operations Center must be trained and certified by the battalion and brigade leadership. Due to the nature of conflict, units will have personnel turnover. New personnel will move into positions of greater responsibility, and thus the unit must have a certification program to qualify, train, and certify new personnel. Even though rules of engagement are restrictive, units and leaders must plan for indirect fires and effects. Those plans must include worst-case scenarios. This video is a recreation of an insurgent attack in the village of Wanat in Nuristan province on July 13, 2008. Located in northeastern Afghanistan, Nuristan province is just south of the highest peaks of the Hindu Kush Mountains. The region is spectacularly rugged and divided into numerous small river valleys separated by steep mountain ridges. Task Force Rock, 2nd of the 503rd Infantry, deployed to Afghanistan in June of 2007, determined to build on its predecessor's success in the Pesh River Valley and its capillary valleys of Wadapur, Korangal, and Waigal. Task Force Rock, one of 4 maneuver battalions, was subordinate to Task Force Bayonet. Within Task Force Rock, Chosen Company was responsible for the Waigal Valley. At this time, the Afghanistan Theater of Operations was Central Command's lower priority, with most of its resources and efforts focused on Iraq. Within Afghanistan, Task Force Rock was not the main effort, and so was forced to operate without optimal manning. Without sufficient forces to employ the clear, hold, build strategy common to counterinsurgency operations, Task Force Rock adopted the separate, stabilize, engage model from Task Force Spartan. Task Force Spartan had demonstrated some success with this model throughout the area of operations, including the Waigal Valley, by coupling it with the practice of locating small bases containing platoon-sized forces near local populations. At the outset of Task Force Rock's deployment, they had 14 such bases, including 2 in the Waigal Valley. Successful employment of various assets greatly enhanced the success of these small bases. They relied heavily on aviation, engineering, and fire support to extend their reach, sustainability, and survivability. This was of particular importance in the Waigal Valley because Cop Ranch House, near the village of Aranas, and Cop Bella were only accessible by helicopter. In August 2007, Chosen Company Commander publicly fired the incompetent and corrupt local Afghan security guard chief at the ranch house. Shortly after his firing, on August 22nd, more than 60 insurgents attacked Cop Ranch House in an attempt to overrun the post. The insurgents penetrated the Cop defenses by exploiting Afghan security guard weaknesses. When it was over, 1 Afghan security guard and 1 Afghan National Army soldier were killed in action. 11 paratroopers were wounded. This action highlighted Cop Ranch House's known vulnerabilities, isolation from the village of Aranas, and dependence on helicopter transport. As a result, Task Force Rock abandoned Cop Ranch House early in October. There were 2 other actions that provided further indication of the deteriorating counterinsurgency situation in the Waigal Valley. First, on November 9th, Chosen Company's 1st platoon was ambushed following a shura, or village council meeting, in Aranas, sustaining heavy casualties. Afterwards, the Task Force Rock commander informed the Aranas local civilian leadership that all reconstruction projects would be frozen until they agreed to assist coalition forces to improve security in the Waigal Valley. The second event took place on January 26, 2008 at Cop Bella. Sergeant First Class Kaler, the platoon sergeant of Chosen Company's 2nd Platoon, while checking Afghan security guard stations, was shot and killed by an Afghan security guard sentry. An official AR-15-6 investigation ruled it as an accident, but the platoon still felt that he had been murdered. In contradiction of Islamic and regional traditions, Chosen Company was not offered any regrets or condolences from the local population. The lack of customary grief practices further weakened relationships between coalition forces and the Waigal population. The local population was not merely expressing traditional xenophobia and desire for isolation, but was also responding to legitimate threats from active insurgents. They felt they could not be seen as supporting coalition forces unless they were being afforded adequate protection. Cop Bella had been identified as a vulnerable post as early as the Task Force Rock pre-deployment site survey. Its isolation from ground-based resupply and reinforcement caused concern that it could be overrun by a sizable insurgent force, or that a resupply helicopter could be shot down. Contributing to this unease were reports of insurgents massing forces nearby. On March 7th, Task Force Bayonet, the brigade combat team responsible for the Waigal Valley, ordered planning to commence for closing down Cop Bella and relocating the coalition presence to Wanat. Wanat was a desired relocation site because it was the Waigal District Center, which would allow coalition forces to develop a good relationship with the local populace. It also had road access to Camp Blessing and the Task Force Rock headquarters 5 miles to the south. Coalition forces and local leadership began negotiations to secure a site for the new COP, which was to be named COP Kaler in honor of Sergeant First Class Kaler. Village leaders made it known that any cooperation on their part would leave them exposed to insurgent repercussions. At Ashur on May 26, local leaders asked that coalition forces seize the land and then make payments later to avoid displaying their overt cooperation with coalition forces. This sure did not go well, as indicated by a gross violation of well-established cultural traditions when the Task Force Rock leadership was not invited to have lunch with local elders. In addition, as the Task Force Rock element returned to Cop Blessing, they were ambushed, resulting in the serious injury of 2 paratroopers. The Task Force Rock officers felt the local elders had specifically delayed the Shura so that the ambush could be set up. The strained relationship was again evident during a similarly tense Shura on June 8th. Task Force Rock believed the only thing that prevented another ambush was the threat of spy planes and bombers. Despite local objections and only a few weeks of deployment remaining, Task Force Rock continued planning for the operation to close Cop Bella and relocate to Wanat. This operation was now coined Rock Move. From the company through the division level, it was believed that Task Force Rock was a better choice than Task Force Duke, their relief, to close Cop Bella and establish Cop Kaler. Chosen Company had spent 14 months conducting intense and complex counterinsurgency operations in and around the Waigal Valley. They were very familiar with the insurgents' tactics and weapon employment preferences and respected their fighting skill. Though Task Force Duke would be fresh, it would suffer from inexperience and reduced combat power compared to Task Force Rock. As Rock Move planning progressed into late June and early July 2008, Task Force Rock intelligence officers expected an attack on Cop Bella. This appeared to be realized on July 3rd, then again on July 4th when it came under mortar attack. Chosen Company directed 2 AH-64 Apache helicopters to engage a pair of hijacked pickup trucks egressing from the insurgent mortar positions. This attack effectively stopped future mortar attacks, but also killed and injured several civilians that were in the pickup trucks. According to U.S. intelligence sources, the insurgent commander was among the wounded. This event was viewed by local media as the last straw for good relations between coalition forces and local residents, but Task Force Rock's intelligence officer viewed it as having minimal impact. The operation planners, including Chosen Company leadership, considered several likely threats to Operation Rock Move. The first was the threat of an attack on Cop Bella or the shooting down of a transport helicopter during evacuation. The most likely threats were assessed to be harassing sniper and possible mortar fire at Cop Bella and Wanat, and possible ambushes and IED attacks on the road between Cop Blessing and Wanat. Rock Move was initially delayed several times due to a number of problems, including weather, logistics, and complications related to the July 4th mortar attack. Once it began on July 8th, it went as scheduled, with surprisingly no insurgent interference. 2nd Platoon of Chosen Company arrived in Wanat on the evening of July 8th, with the rest of the force arriving by helicopter on July 9th. The force at Cop Kaler was sizable, consisting of 3 paratrooper rifle squads, each with a vehicle and crew-served weapon, a platoon of 24 Afghan National Army infantry, and 3 Marine embedded training team members. For fire support, the platoon was augmented with the tube-launch wire-guided, optically tracked tow missile launcher system, a 60mm mortar, and a 120mm mortar. They were also augmented with a squad of engineers with a Bobcat loader to build fortifications and a long-range advanced scout surveillance system, LRAS-3, to provide around-the-clock surveillance. Task Force Rock had also secured the use of several different ISR platforms for use during Rock Move, including full-motion video as well as signals intelligence assets. Though powerful tools, these could not be counted on as the sole means of detecting enemy movement. Insurgents have become adept at using vegetation and moving in small numbers to avoid detection by ISR assets. Upon arrival, 2nd Platoon began to fortify their positions. They chose a large open field to the south of the town across the street from the bazaar and a building that served as a hotel and cafe. The COP was ringed with concertina wire, and the Bobcat was used to fill HESCO barriers and excavate positions for several squads in the mortar pit. First Squad set up a traffic control point near the bazaar, which served as the main gate for the COP. The Afghan National Army platoon established a second traffic control point 100 yards to the south, as well as fighting positions at the northern perimeter. 2nd Platoon also established OP topside on the ridge to the east of COP Kaler. The OP was a complex of 3 interconnected fighting positions built around a large outcropping of boulders. It was not ideal terrain, having significant dead space, which could be used by insurgents to maneuver unobserved from a nearby ravine, and a civilian compound above it on the southeast ridge. Ultimately, those detractors were judged to be less severe than the risk of a more isolated observation post with better positioning. Topside was defended by the LRAS-3, 2 M240 machine gun teams, an M249 squad automatic weapon, and an M203 40mm grenade launcher. The force of 9 troopers was rounded out with several riflemen and the platoon's designated marksmen. It was ringed with a single row of barbed wire and walls of double sandbags. Each night, claymore mines were placed in the dead space to the north and east as additional security. Logistics difficulties caused many problems for 2nd Platoon. The heavy equipment and contractors that were supposed to build the COP had to be rescheduled due to delays in executing Rock Move. This also caused a shortage of construction materials, so none of the positions had overhead cover. The Bobcat was only partially affected because the fuel blivet pump broke and it took a day to get spare parts. This combination of events caused the paratroopers of 2nd Platoon to manually excavate their positions. The dirt was excessively hard and the weather hot, so they quickly ran through their 2-day supply of water. The lack of a planned resupply on the 9th forced them to ration their work and conserve water until a sizable water resupply came on July 11th. Rock Move enjoyed a significant amount of ISR coverage, especially in the early days of the move. The UAVs were directed to look in known insurgent safe havens and for movement on the hillside surrounding Wanat. No sizable insurgent presence was observed massing in the valley, so those assets were pulled to other areas. Throughout the initial days of construction, 2nd Platoon was constantly observed by insurgents. Several military-age males were seen sitting in the bazaar watching intently. Few women or children were observed in the area, and men were observed walking around slowly as though they were measuring the COP with pace counts. This scrutiny was reported to chosen leadership and identified as expected for the operation. Early in the afternoon of July 12th, another possible attack indicator emerged. The 2nd Platoon leader heard about a shura occurring in the town that he wasn't invited to. According to local custom, the platoon leader is equivalent to an elder and has the right to attend the shura. Upon arrival at the shura, he and the Afghan National Army representatives were not received warmly, and there was speculation that the elders were in fact planning an attack. This was reported up the intelligence chain of command and gained significant attention by Task Force Rock's senior leadership. Shortly after the shura, the chosen company commander arrived at the COP. Despite the outward resistance toward coalition forces, he was invited to dinner that night by a villager loyal to the Afghan government, who warned of an impending attack. The company commander was told he should shoot at anyone seen moving through the hills. Over the course of the deployment, the commander had received repeated warnings from locals about attacks that never happened, and put this warning in that same category. The unit's greatest fear was a rocket attack or indirect fire attack before they could install overhead protection. Nothing they experienced led them to believe a large-scale attack was imminent. On the morning of July 13th, 2nd Platoon Chosen Company and their Afghan partners conducted Stand 2 at 0400, and the 2nd Platoon leader was organizing a patrol to find a more advantageous site for OP topside. As Stand 2 continued, the trooper manning the Improved Target Acquisition System, ITAS, on the TOW observed 5 personnel moving through the hills 1,500 meters west of the COP. It was unlikely that local citizens would travel together like that, so Chosen Company began to coordinate a tow and mortar attack. 12 minutes after the insurgents were initially spotted, fire mission preparations were interrupted by 2 bursts from an insurgent machine gun and a large number of rocket-propelled grenades. The initial volley of machine gun fire served as a signal for the remainder of the insurgent force. Intense and continuous volleys of machine gun and RPG fire from all sides of the COP continued for the next hour. The insurgent fire was accurate and came from positions that were within several yards of the perimeter. The hotel, mosque, and bazaar were all being used as firing positions. Immediately after the enemy opened fire, Chosen Company Commander notified Task Force Rock Command Post and requested indirect fire and air support. In response, Task Force Rock also ordered 1st Platoon at Camp Blessing to leave as soon as possible to reinforce 2nd Platoon at Wanat. The constant rate of fire from positions in the village effectively isolated OP topside from the main perimeter. Reinforcing and maintaining contact with the observation post became Chosen's top priority for the remainder of the fight. The opening volley was particularly devastating to the TOW and the other crew-served weapons at the COP. 3 RPGs caught the TOW vehicle in their crossfire, setting the vehicle on fire. This forced the crew to abandon the vehicle and move to the command post. The 120mm mortar section also drew tremendous fire during the opening portion of the attack. The mix of full and half-filled HESCO barriers provided some protection from insurgents who had climbed nearby trees and who were firing from the building roofs. The mortar section managed to execute the planned fire mission, and then reverted back to defending the pit with grenades and small arms. Coalition forces made several attempts to reach the 60mm mortar position, but were deterred by the heavy rate of fire. Its location in the middle of the COP and incomplete fighting position made it especially dangerous. It would not be fired for the duration of the engagement. A few minutes into the attack, an RPG round exploded near the ammunition supply point within the mortar pit. This caused the personnel in the mortar pit to evacuate to the command post position. Shortly after, the TOW round started to cook off in the TOW vehicle, scattering burning missiles throughout the COP. Chosen Company Commander was managing fire support assets and making reports to headquarters. Rock Move had priority of fires for Task Force Rock, who launched 155mm indirect fire, which landed only 6 minutes after the attack started. The mountainous terrain made accurate targeting with the 155mm difficult, causing them to impact inside the danger close radius of 660 meters from Cop Kaler. Responding to an early request for air support, a B-1 bomber dropped 2 bombs north of the battlefield to prevent insurgent reinforcement 38 minutes into the attack. The traffic control point manned by 1st Squad Chosen Company did not escape insurgent attention. They were taking intense fire from the compound to the southeast, disabling their M2 50 caliber machine gun only 5 minutes after the fight started. They returned fire with an AT-4, destroying the position, but fire from other positions continued. OP topside was devastated by the initial fire. Despite being badly wounded, the surviving paratroopers managed to return fire until they either ran out of ammunition or their weapons were damaged. After initially using one of 2 available M240 machine guns, they then continued firing with M4s, grenades, and claymore mines. It was not long before Chosen sent reinforcements to the remaining defenders at topside. 2 soldiers, including the 2nd platoon leader, ran between the bazaar and hotel. They reached the observation post safely, but were almost immediately killed along with the topside defender while attempting to set up a defensive position. By this time, 5 of the original 9 members of the OP garrison remained alive, but only 2 were able to engage several insurgents who had penetrated the perimeter wire and were only feet from the soldiers. 1 soldier was killed attempting to suppress enemy fire from the hotel. Running out of ammunition, 1 paratrooper found a light anti-tank weapon, which he fired before he and other survivors abandoned the OP and moved down to the 1st Squad's traffic control point. Unbeknownst to the paratroopers, they had left a soldier at OP topside. He managed to scrounge up an M203 grenade launcher and began to lob rounds into the dead space north of the observation post. After expending all his rounds, he contacted the command post on his forward observer radio and informed them that the OP was going to fall if reinforcements weren't sent. 1st Platoon departed Camp Blessing at 05:15 and was making good time en route to Wanat. Expecting IEDs and ambushes, the platoon used its heavy weapon systems to fire into known insurgent positions along the way. A 4-man element was dispatched to topside. They engaged insurgents as they moved to the observation post and quickly established fighting positions to counter a renewed insurgent attack. Shortly after, all 4 soldiers were wounded by a combination of RPG and machine gun fire. An inadvertent hot mic on the topside radio interrupted communications, causing the chosen leadership to lose situational awareness of the OP. This caused the platoon sergeant to quickly assemble and lead another relief element of 8 men to the OP. As they reached topside approximately an hour into the fight, a pair of AH-64 Apaches arrived overhead to provide close combat aviation support. The Apache's first gun run was in the brush directly adjoining OP topside, and the second was about 50 yards east of the observation post, where the heaviest fire was coming from. Their arrival and subsequent fires had an immediate impact on topside by suppressing or destroying enemy forces. The enemy fire became less accurate and more remote, but they remained in their positions. UH-60 Casevac flights began to land at about the same time as the Apache's arrival. They utilized a primary landing zone at the main COP and a secondary impromptu LZ closer to OP topside. Casevac flights continued throughout the day through thick smoke and intense ground fire, evacuating 20 wounded and 9 KIA. 1st Platoon had traveled as quickly as possible from Camp Blessing, covering the distance in 45 minutes, half the time it normally would take, and arriving at 0600. They dropped 2 soldiers at the 1st Squad traffic control point and assigned their medic to the command post. The most desperate fighting at OP topside had ended by 0630, allowing 1st Platoon to mount a counter-assault. 1 squad from 1st Platoon with 2 vehicles advanced through the center of Wanat, catching the insurgents off guard. Taking advantage of the success from the vehicle assault, 1st Platoon dispatched an element to clear the hotel and eradicate any sporadic fire coming from the town. 1st Platoon continued to fight insurgents in and around the village, at one point engaging targets between the traffic control point and topside. The other squad from 1st Platoon went to topside, where they were greeted with heavy but distant fire from the hilltops. RPGs continued to come in from those positions, wounding 3 soldiers, but the OP was no longer under the threat of direct assault. The 1st Platoon's clearing operations pushed the insurgents out into the open where their positions were marked with colored smoke so the Apaches could engage. They fired both their cannons and Hellfire missiles into buildings in the town. As these effects took hold, they shifted fire to the compounds attacking OP topside. By 0830, 4 hours into the attack, the insurgents began to withdraw. Task Force Rock continued to send additional forces, dispatching a 2nd Quick Reaction Force from 3rd Platoon Alpha Company and a scout section. The Alpha Company commander took control of defending Cop Kaler. Later in the day, 3rd Platoon of Bravo Company arrived by CH-47 to defend OP topside. They were not at all satisfied with its location, and very quickly relocated the observation post compound to the south and east. Throughout the rest of the day, battalion and brigade leadership visited Wanat as additional assets continued to arrive. A section of Afghan National Army Commandos and U.S. Special Operations Advisors also arrived. During their search of the town, they found a large arsenal of over 100 weapons, including a large quantity of 7.62mm ammunition and RPGs at the National Police Station. This seemed excessive for the 20-man force, especially since many of the weapons had recently been fired. The police force, wearing unusually clean uniforms, acted as if nothing had happened. The Afghan commandos searched over 100 structures that day. They found numerous small arms, radios, IED components, and several handheld video cameras. In one house, they found a stack of National Police ID cards and ID construction materials. This provided evidence that the town had been completely infiltrated by insurgents and used as a base for the attack. Small skirmishes between coalition and insurgent forces continued throughout the next day. Coalition forces used ISR assets to identify potential targets in the mountains around Cop Kaler, which were then engaged by a number of indirect fire and aviation assets. On July 14th, Task Force Rock Commander and his operations officer discussed two alternatives regarding the future of COP Kaler. Continue constructing the COP or withdraw. Several hours later, the decision was made to withdraw since the battle had drastically changed the conditions in Wanat. The locals clearly demonstrated their support for the insurgents and would not maintain the conditions necessary to support coalition projects. The incoming task force would not have the manpower to overcome this problem. In a country like Afghanistan with extreme terrain, altitude, and weather, the positive effect of a small infantry force can be multiplied by committing what would normally be considered an excessive number of force multipliers, such as aviation and engineer assets. In a war of small, heavily fortified posts, readily available aviation and engineer units can extend the reach, sustainability, and survivability of the maneuver formation committed to the fight. Soldiers at all levels can be lulled into a sense of security in regard to what they believe the enemy will do based on their previous experiences. Virtually everyone involved with Operation Rock Move, from squad to CJTF, expected the enemy to respond in a particular way. That perceived expectation was quite different from what actually happened. Military history has many examples of soldiers turning threat analysis based on templates into ironclad paradigms to their ultimate detriment. While the outcome at Wanat was not as catastrophic as some earlier examples from American military history, the cost to 2nd Platoon, Chosen Company, was high in July 2008. The normal progression of observations by low-level units up the intelligence chain can lead to the loss of nuance and significance of the successive intelligence summaries untimely reaching decision-makers. What the Brigade Combat Team S2 called atmospherics tended to drop out of the reporting of events as the multiple echelons recast and broadened their submissions. One general officer in the Wanat story considered this phenomenon important enough to warrant possible structural changes in the reporting methodology. When units rotate in and out of theater on a more or less fixed but staggered schedule, strong consideration should be given to the human effects such policies create. Tasks given to both incoming and outgoing units should be balanced against both units' capabilities and expectations. At the higher echelons, these considerations seem to have been well balanced in regard to executing Operation Rock Move. However, some of that understanding and balance may not have penetrated to the company and platoon level, where the policy had to be implemented at the end of a long, tiring, and dangerous tour in Afghanistan. In complex counterinsurgency environments, host nation forces will likely be present and will also not initially reach the level of professionalism thought to be necessary by their American counterparts. This disparity in capabilities can easily lead American personnel to underutilize host nation assets when attached to an American-led operation, resulting in a potential loss of fighting power. The Afghan National Army platoon at Wanat, while still relatively immature as a unit, seems to have been underutilized by 2nd Platoon in the days leading up to the engagement on July 13th. Given the need to be near the population in a counterinsurgency operation, coalition forces must retain situational awareness beyond their perimeter. If true standoff distance cannot be obtained or is deemed counterproductive, some means to see beyond the next building periodically must be gained. At Wanat, regular patrolling was foregone in the interest of advancing the state of defensive fortifications, a difficult but understandable choice. Given the particular physical layout of the Wanat position, more aggressive patrolling may have been the only means to gain necessary situational awareness to deny the enemy an unimpeded and concealed approach to the COP. In small unit actions involving defensive positions, choices made early in microenvironments may have large consequences. OP Topside was positioned to see the distant bridges, higher mountains, and the southeast ridge, but had absolutely no capability to see into the ravine of the Waiscaldi Creek or into the dead space little more than 10 yards in front of it. The LRAS-3 emplaced at Topside could see far but not near, thereby permitting a concealed approach to both Topside, the village buildings, and the main COP. There seldom are perfect choices in defensive emplacement. The fact remains that an unobserved approach to within grenade range of the coalition positions was left uncovered. The formidable earth-moving done by the Topside garrison may have inadvertently provided a false sense of security, however well it sheltered the occupants of the observation posts. Throughout the history of infantry fighting, emplacement decisions of only a few yards difference occasionally make a vast difference in the outcome of the fight. Wanat was no exception. Full-motion video and robust signal intelligence are helpful but are not cure-alls, even if available 24/7. Technology like ITAS and LRAS-3 extend the range of vision, but cannot see into dead space 10 yards to our front. Eventually, technology gives way to human factors, courage, fear, fatigue, to name a few. We must rely eventually upon what some have called aggressive self-rescue by individual soldiers. The engagement at Wanat is an example of that phenomenon. This video is a dramatization of the attack by anti-Afghanistan forces on U.S. and Afghan national security forces at Kop Keating and OP Fritsch in Nuristan, Afghanistan on October 3, 2009. This attack resulted in U.S. and ANSF casualties and catastrophic damage of Kop Keating. All times during this video dramatization are in Afghan local. Established in July 2006 by the Kamdesh Provincial Reconstruction Team, Kop Keating was located approximately 25 kilometers from the Pakistan border in the Kamdesh district, 226 kilometers northeast of Kabul, and 137 kilometers northeast of Jalalabad. The squadron headquarters was located at Fob Bostik, 30 kilometers southeast of Kop Keating, in approximately 10 minutes by helicopter. Both the task force and brigade headquarters were located at Fob Finney in Jalalabad. Flight time from Kop Keating to Fob Finney was 40 minutes. The Kop was situated along the lone improved dirt road and surrounded by extremely rugged mountainous high ground, and was positioned to interdict historic trafficking routes to and from Pakistan. AF and smugglers used this remote area to transport weapons, fighters and equipment, as well as timber and gems. The main A&A compound was located on Kop Keating. The nearby village of Ermal was located 200 meters west of Kop Keating and was connected by an unimproved dirt road. OP Fritsch was situated due south of Kop Keating on the prominent high ground east of the Afghan village of Kamdesh. The ground unit assigned to Kop Keating and OP Fritsch had experienced over 45 engagements since assuming responsibility in May 2009. On the day of the attack, 53 soldiers and 20 A&A troops occupied Kop Keating. Forces at OP Fritsch numbered 19 soldiers and 10 Afghan National Army. OP Fritsch was located at a straight line distance of 2.2 kilometers from Kop Keating and sits on high ground. There was a 2,144-foot elevation difference between Kop Keating and OP Fritsch, and they were not within line of sight of each other. Anti-Afghanistan forces conducted meetings in the months prior to the attacks with elders throughout the province. Simultaneously, they planned to conduct a large-scale, complex attack to overrun coalition force positions in Nuristan province. The planned attacks were timed to coincide with the scheduled closure of Kop Keating and OP Fritsch as an IO campaign favorable to the AAF. AAF forces occupied fighting positions inside the mosque on a nearby ridgeline at approximately 5:30 a.m. local on October 3, 2009. At the same time that the mosque was being occupied, support by fire Dishka positions were being in place in the vicinity of Kop Keating. In the early morning hours of October 3, 2009, AAF executed the thoroughly planned assault with small arms fire, RPGs, and B-10 recoilless rifles from the surrounding high ground and the mosque. During the open attack, all of the AAF support by fire positions opened up on Cop Keating. The fire from the SBF pinned down the mortar pit, and the soldiers were unable to return fire. Simultaneously, while the attack was started on Cop Keating, another AAF element opened fire on OP Frisch. This event put the U.S. platoon at OP Frisch in their own fight, and they were unable to provide any fire support to Cop Keating. Indirect fire from FOB Bostic began in support of Cop Keating. Two F-15s arrived on station. They started engaging targets around Cop Keating. U.S. and ANA forces were pinned down by the AAF in multiple positions surrounding Cop Keating. The AAF executed a simultaneous attack from three different directions, supported by B-10 and RPG fire on all parts of the camp. Those assaults focused on the ECP, the ANA compound in the east and the western side of the camp. This forced the U.S. Operational Mentor and Liaison Team and the ANA to collapse into a smaller defensive perimeter within Cop Keating. At that time, 2 U.S. soldiers were pinned down by AAF fire in the mortar pit and could not join the defensive perimeter. At that time, coalition forces fell back to their final defensive perimeter. Due to the extreme number of AAF forces surrounding Cop Keating, the Apache contacted Cop Keating to determine the frontline trace of the defensive perimeter. At that time, they engaged the enemy leading to the bridge and provided air support to cover the Cop Keating mortar pit. A Predator began collection operations shortly after the battle started. Continuous UAS coverage remained on station for the entire battle. Buildings in the ANA and U.S. compounds started to burn and contributed to the smoke that obscured most of the area. OP Frisch defeated AAF forces and were able to provide 120mm mortar fire in support of Cop Keating. On the second weapon pass of the mosque, an AH-64 from the aerial weapons team was hit by Dishka fire and forced to return to base. The remaining aircraft from the aerial weapons team was also struck, but remained on station. Approximately 3.5 hours after the initial attack, the fires from the aerial weapons team and close air support suppressed the AF. This allowed the U.S. forces to attempt to retake lost positions within Cop Keating. During the fight, the AH-64s in support of ground forces came under intense enemy ground fire consisting of heavy machine guns and Dishka. During this period, a third AH-64 was struck by ground fire and was forced to return to base. As the aerial weapons team suppressed AAF elements, the defenders of the final defensive perimeter continued to push out to retake lost areas of Cop Keating. The advance to retake positions was hampered due to the lack of available manpower. Most of the buildings on the Cop were found to be on fire. However, the defenders were able to link up with the soldiers in the mortar pit. The first lift of the QRF from FOB Bostic arrived on station. Soon after their arrival at OP Frisch, a weather hold was declared and further elements of the QRF were forced to wait at Fob Bostik. After an hour later, the weather hold was lifted, allowing the rest of the QRF to land at OP Frisch. Within the first 3 hours after the attack, the A&A compound was completely engulfed in flames and the majority of the area was obscured by smoke. Fires from the A&A started to spread to the rest of Cop Keating. Approximately 8 hours after the attack, Cop Keating's TOC caught fire. The command element was displaced from the burning TOC and it was reestablished in a secondary location. As the fire spread throughout the COP, the soldiers at the aid station cut down an adjacent tree to prevent the fire from spreading to the aid station. The Quick Reaction Force departed OP Frisch on foot to Cop Keating. This is a long movement downhill, and to complicate matters, the path was not direct. Switchbacks and the presence of AAF elements slowed movement. Approximately 9 hours after the attack began, all buildings were on fire at Cop Keating with the exception of one. Only the aid station remained safe, where the alternate TOC was co-located. During their descent to Cop Keating and approximately 2 hours into their movement, the lead elements of the QRF called in close air support and engaged the AAF. The engagement was short and forced the Quick Reaction Force to move to a bounding overwatch. This further slowed movement to Cop Keating. As dusk fell, the Quick Reaction Force continued movement to Cop Keating. Approximately 13 hours after the Battle of Cop Keating began, the Quick Reaction Force entered Cop Keating and began clearing operations. The Quick Reaction Force also assisted in the setup of a landing zone to allow for medevac flights. The intensity of enemy ground fire directed at the responding aircraft prevented the aerial medevac from infiltrating prior to the U.S. unit securing the HLZ. Both close air support and close combat aviation were instrumental in the ground operations defending Cop Keating. 44 close air support airframes were employed for a total on-station time of approximately 21 hours. 21 close combat aviation were employed in support of Cop Keating. ISR provided 12 platforms. In the confined mountainous constraints imposed in the vicinity surrounding Cop Keating, 37 GBUs were expended, 2 Hellfire missiles were fired, and 3 strafing runs were conducted. A few minutes after the arrival of the Quick Reaction Force, the first medevac aircraft touched down and several of the wounded were loaded on the aircraft. Approximately 16 hours after the attack started, the last medevac aircraft departed Cop Keating.
The screen and passing the body of Neil Roberts. Chapman, a U.S. Air Force combat controller, and the SEALs are attempting to rescue their lost teammate. You'll watch Chapman's heroic actions as he saves the lives of his entire SEAL team and then another 18 members of a Quick Reaction Force, earning America's highest award, the Medal of Honor. Chapman and the SEALs exfil their MH-47 helicopter. John is the second individual to exit and immediately moves in the direction of the summit. He can be seen moving off to the right of the screen, alone. The team is taking heavy fire from every direction, as indicated by the arrows, as Chapman begins engaging targets. You can see spent cartridges ejecting from his M4. Chapman then begins closing with the enemy, forcing his way upslope in knee and thigh-deep snow. He is constantly under fire as he does this. Chapman's team leader begins to close on Chapman, following his trail through the snow. The dark mass above Chapman is a fortified bunker containing 2 enemy fighters, each armed with AK-47s, who are firing down on the team in the darkness. This bunker will come to be known as Bunker Number 1. To the left of the tree and Bunker 1 is another gray mass. This is a rock outcropping that came to be called the Boulder. Between Bunker 1 and this boulder can be seen the body of slain SEAL Neil Roberts, the man Chapman and the others are attempting to recover. Chapman, still alone and closest to the enemy, pauses to engage targets as his team leader follows him, but never actually catches up with him. Chapman, on his own, now makes the decision to charge directly into the enemy bunker, despite withering point-blank fire. Chapman, now literally on top of the enemy, engages the 2 combatants and kills them, saving the lives of the remaining SEALs. He does this from a distance of no more than 10 feet. These actions, by themselves, earned him his first Medal of Honor. He then climbs into and takes control of the bunker. Having cleared the immediate threat, Chapman is then joined by his team leader in Bunker 1. You can then see Chapman and his team leader engaging the next bunker, known as Bunker 2, which is situated to the left edge of the screen. This bunker, manned by a handful of Chechen and Uzbek fighters, also contains a heavy PKM machine gun, hand grenades, and rocket-propelled grenades. John Chapman is shot twice at this time in the torso and collapses, incapacitated. You are now looking at a new angle, and at the left of the screen can be seen the 2-man fire team and team leader on top of the boulder. Just below it is Bunker 1 with the mortally wounded Chapman. One SEAL can be seen firing his modified M60 machine gun from the hip into Bunker 2 on the right side of the screen until he is struck by grenade shrapnel and tumbles 10 feet off the top of the boulder, collapsing at the feet of his team leader, thus setting off a chain of events that would lead to the SEALs abandoning Chapman on the summit. The wounded SEAL and the team leader can be seen conferring about his injuries. Moments later, the SEALs decide to retreat from the summit because their position is untenable in the face of continued massive enemy firepower. They can be seen moving toward the right side of the screen and passing the body of Neil Roberts. Unfortunately, the SEALs do not pass John Chapman, who is above them and inside Bunker 1. This angle shows 3 SEALs in a triangle. The larger black heat signature is a smoke grenade. Just to its left is a donkey and dead Al-Qaeda fighter killed by Chapman. The steepness of the mountain can be seen as the SEALs begin to slide down the near sheer face. The team leader, desperate for relief and now with 2 wounded teammates, asks for uncontrolled airstrikes from an orbiting Air Force AC-130 gunship. The impacts you see are from 105mm howitzer rounds being fired onto the ridgetop in order to save the remaining SEALs. Because neither the SEALs nor gunship know Chapman is alive, he is experiencing these detonations from his position. At approximately 5:20 in the morning, Chapman recovers and begins to engage the enemy. Bunker 1 is on the right side center of the screen and Bunker 2 to the left near the screen center. It will never be known what caused his incapacitation and recovery. Of the 2 rounds that originally wounded him, at least 1 was mortal, and at this time he is experiencing severe blood loss and shock. Despite that, he begins his one-man stand against 24 enemy combatants. During this time, Chapman initiates a series of radio calls, many of which are heard by a fellow combat controller and teammate of his and Delta Force operators on a nearby summit. Despite this combat controller's replies, Chapman never acknowledges whether because of damage to his equipment or himself will never be known. This new angle and footage shows Chapman at the top, identified by the green dot under the tree at Bunker 1. The lower center of the screen shows the first enemy fighter who is about to charge Chapman in the hopes of killing the American. The timestamp at the bottom shows it is now 6:05 in the morning and fully light. He's been fighting alone now for 40+ minutes and has received more gunshot and shrapnel wounds as a result of the fierce combat. This scene shows the second of several enemy charges. In this stunning display of determination and courage, Chapman can be seen fighting hand-to-hand with the fighter. In the larger screen display can be seen additional enemy moving on to the summit. But right now, John Chapman is fighting for his life. 6 minutes later, in this new shot, Chapman can hear another helicopter approaching the summit. He is in the bottom center of the screen underneath the tree and can be seen in the magnified inset box as he begins his desperate final stand to save the lives of the 18 men on the helicopter. The red dots are enemy fighters. John begins engaging the enemy in multiple directions and is rapidly approaching the last of his ammunition. The helicopter contains a quick reaction force comprised of Rangers, pararescuemen, and another combat controller. It is now 6:13 and the helicopter is short final. The enemy is desperately trying to displace Chapman so they can put heavy weapons or rocket-propelled grenades in Bunker 1 while simultaneously engaging the helicopter. With the choice to save his life or the lives of his unknown comrades, Chapman makes the decision to climb out of the bunker and begin firing in multiple directions as can be seen in the inset. Suffering from as many as a dozen wounds, Chapman is in fact already in the process of dying. As he fights, the helicopter is struck by a rocket-propelled grenade and makes a remarkable controlled crash just below Chapman and the summit. Chapman, now off-screen, continues to cover his comrades as they pour out of the stricken helicopter. Some of them are fatally shot as they exit. These images, with Chapman fighting the enemy at close quarter, are the last to show him alive and in this heroic act, thus qualifying for his second Medal of Honor. Ultimately, Chapman would expend all but the last few rounds of his ammunition, until, finally, after 16 bullet and shrapnel wounds, Chapman succumbs when he is shot through the heart. We will never know his final thoughts or words, but what we do know is his decisions and actions single-handedly saved the lives of 23 comrades. For more information about John Chapman's amazing story and the details about this mission, visit
72 miles. Looks like a flight of 2, Angels 10.
Close out concurs, showing 78 miles.
Throttle back just a little bit here.
James closeout shows 25 mile separation, turn it down.
Contacts appear to be heading 315 now, speed 430, Angels approximately 8,000.
Roger, Ace, take it north.
We're going to have to make a quick loop here.
Starboard, I'm going to give you collision here. Okay, come starboard about 40. .207, 61 miles now, bearing 180, Angels 8, heading 330. Steady up.
Alpha Bravo is close out.
Come back port, 20 degrees here. He's jinking now at us. Okay, bogies appear to be coming, jinking to the right now, heading north. Speed 430, Angels 5,000 now in the descent. Okay, let's take her down now. We're going down. Clear. Slows out 53 miles now. Bogies appear to be heading directly at us. I'm coming port, steady up 150 for 30-degree offset, 50 miles. .49 miles now, speed 450, Angels 9. I'm going down to 3. Crossing back over.
Roger.
Roger that. 30-degree offset now. Bogies heading 340 speed, 500. Let's accelerate.
Okay, they look like they're at 9,000 feet now.
Roger. Bogies have jinked back into us now. Let's come starboard 30 degrees the other side. Coming starboard. Say there, Angels.
Ames joined on set station.
Roger. Angels now 11. Steady up.
Close out. Warning yellow. Weapons hold. I repeat. Warning yellow. Weapons hold. Alpha Bravo out. Roger.
Okay.
Gypsies. Pass up. Bravo directs. Warning yellow. Weapons hold.
35 miles here.
Roger that. Bogies have jinked back into me now for the third time. Nose is on at 35 miles. Angels 7.
Bravo, closed out. You copy?
Okay, I'm taking another offset. Starboard, 210.
I got locked up, Leos. It's 30 miles and he's at 13,000 feet of trailer.
Roger that. Level off here. Okay, bogies jinked back into me for the fourth time. I'm coming back starboard. Come back port now. Port, 27 miles. Bogies at 7,000 feet.
45.
Watch out, bogies 13550, Angels 16. Heading 340.
Okay.
Roger, same bogies.
You're in collision now. Steering.
Okay, bogies have jinked back at me again for the fifth time. They're on my nose now. Inside of 20 miles. Master arm on. Master arm on.
See? Good light.
Good light.
Okay, centering up the T. Bogey has jinked back into me again. 16 miles, center the dot.
Say your Angels.
I'm at Angels 5. Nose up.
Oh, his Angels.
Oh, wait a minute.
Angels are at 9.
Alpha Bravo from 207.
13 miles. Fox 1. Fox 1.
Oh, Jesus.
Beacon right.
Roger that. 10 miles. He's back on my nose. Fox 1 again.
Watching him up.
6 miles. 6 miles.
Tally 2. Tally 2. Turning into me.
Roger that. 5 miles. 4 miles.
Okay, he's got a missile off.
Breaking right.
Good hit on one.
Roger that. Good kill. Good kill.
I've got the other one. Select Fox 2. Select Fox 2. That's Fox 2.
Trailer. Coming hard, stop.
So fucking shoot him. I haven't got a tone.
Got the second one.
I got the second one on the nose right now.
Hey, I'm high cover on you.
Lock him up. Lock him up. Bam! Shoot him, Fox 2! I can't, I don't have a fucking tone. So what? Good kill!
Hey, good kill. Pilot ejected. Pilot ejected out of the second one.
Okay, Meister, let's head north,
Okay, port side, high, I'm coming down hard.
Roger.
Roger that. Gypsies are flowing north. Let's go down low, on the deck. Unload, 500 knots. Let's get out of here.
Hey, 2 good shoots. You're showing 2 good shoots in the air here from Munster.
Roger that. I see the,
I got the splash. One splash.
One splash.
Taking it down to 3,000 here, Munster.
The splash 160 at 96.
Let's go. Munster down to 3,000. Let's get out of here.
Running north on your right side.
Roger. The other chute is high up, just to the right of the first splash.
We got good shoots on all of them.
Roger, two flaggers flash. Close out, we're heading north.
The strike against Benina probably prevented the Libyans from scrambling their potent Mirage F-1 and MiG-25 Foxbat interceptors before the U.S. aircraft had departed Libyan airspace. In all, both raids actually lasted only 13 minutes. Shortly afterwards, one F-111 was reported downed, and a search and rescue mission was launched from the carriers. Unfortunately, the two-man crew were lost. Major Fernando Ribas Dominici and Captain Paul Lawrence were subsequently awarded posthumous air medals. The remainder of the strike force returned safely to their bases, although one F-111 had to divert to Rota in Spain because of an overheating problem. The first F-111 touched down back at Lakenheath at 0630 hours the following morning. Mission accomplished. Later reconnaissance by high-flying SR-71 Blackbirds from Mildenhall confirmed the accuracy of the strike, performed at night after a grueling 6-hour flight.
Get on the boat.